What if Palpatine and the Jedi joined forces? What would happen then? We pick up with Anakin at Padme's apartment one night, 2 years into the Clone Wars. Let's begin. Anakin leaned against the curved back of one of the plush couches that dotted Padme's expansive veranda. The circular space, with its polished floor inlaid with elegant crimson patterns, opened to the Coruscant night. Where daylight would have revealed the golden-hued cityscape, now millions of artificial lights mapped the urban topography in blue-white brilliance. The tall columns stood in regular intervals around the perimeter, supporting the dome ceiling above. Between these columns, flowing curtains occasionally stirred in the gentle climate-controlled breeze, framing segmented views of the Ecumenopolis beyond. Airspeeder lanes formed rivers of moving light against the darkness, their routes flowing between the architectural marvels of the Senate District. His gaze drifted sideways toward the perimeter of the veranda, where Padme stood. She remained perfectly still, contemplative, her silhouette capturing the ambient glow from the urban expanse. "You're so beautiful," he murmured appreciatively. "I'm standing over here, Anakin. That's a support column," came Padme's voice from across the veranda. Anakin turned his head, blinking rapidly as the world around him seemed to shift. What he had thought was Padme revealed itself as merely one of the elegant columns that ringed the veranda. The real Padme stood by the entrance to the living area, arms crossed. "Oh," Anakin mumbled, squinting at the column. "Yes, I see that now." Padme approached him, frustration evident in her brisk steps. The soft fabric of her attire rustled sharply against the polished floor as she strode through pools of amber light cast by recessed ceiling fixtures. "We see each other once every few months," she said, her diplomatic tone barely masking her disappointment. "The least you could do is not be high when we finally get time together." Anakin ran a hand through his hair, the gesture clumsy. It was Master Yoda's birthday celebration. He brought some ancient herb to smoke. Would have been disrespectful to refuse. He pushed himself from the couch and moved toward her, navigating across the circular veranda with uncertain steps. His focus settled on Padme, waiting by a small alcove. He quickened his pace, only to collide face first with a cold, unyielding surface. The impact sent him stumbling backward with a dull thud. "That's a mirror, Anakin." Padme sighed from behind him, moving quickly to his side. She grasped his arm to steady him as he blinked at his own distorted reflection. "So, how old is Yoda now? Did he mention?" "I don't know," Anakin admitted, rubbing the growing knot on his forehead, as Padme guided him away from the mirror. "All he said was that there was rain and lightning when he was born." Padme shrugged. "Let's just sleep. You can't even see straight." She held his arm firmly as they made their way to the bedroom. Once in bed, Anakin flopped down unceremoniously, the mattress conforming to his weight. He grimaced, pulling at the collar of his tunic. "Is it hot in here? The temperature feels wrong." "If you're so bothered, walk over and change it yourself," Padme replied, pulling the covers over herself. The environmental control panel glowed softly on the far wall, untouched. Anakin merely grumbled in response as they both drifted off to sleep. In his dreams, Anakin found himself in a gritty warehouse. A heavy metal shutter rattled upward nearby, the screech echoing through the night. Several Jedi Council members ducked beneath it in formation, entering the warehouse. Somewhere in the distance, sharp, electrifying notes sliced through a driving beat, creating an unmistakable atmosphere of danger. At an adjacent entrance, a second metal shutter rose for Mace Windu and several other council members. Suddenly, the shutter mechanism failed, the heavy metal door dropping several inches. Mace and his companions flinched, ducked, and quickly moved in, abandoning their tough stride momentarily before straightening as one, adjusting their outfits with practiced nonchalance as though nothing had happened. They spread across one side of the warehouse floor, their faces set in exaggerated toughness. Atmospheric haze swirled through harsh overhead lighting, creating dramatic shadows across their features. The camera of Anakin's dream perspective panned slowly across their faces. Mace Windu, in a black jacket over a horizontally striped shirt, Kit Fisto with chrome-plated breathing apparatus, Shak Ti with a spiked mohawk-like headdress, Ki-Adi-Mundi in a studded vest with no shirt beneath, Obi-Wan in a jacket adorned with decorative pins, Ayla Secura in metallic blue with oversized jewelry, the rest looking equally interesting. From the opposite entrance appeared the senators. The dream perspective then made a pan across their faces. Orn Free Taa, sporting a bejeweled eye patch, Ask Ak, wearing an absurdly large hat tilted at a precise angle, and others in equally ridiculous street attire. The pan ended on Masameda, sweating with exertion as he pushed a platform across the Duracrete floor. Atop it stood Chancellor Palpatine, in a pristine white jacket with red lining, black sunglasses concealing his eyes, and a studded collar wrapped around his neck. Palpatine jumped dramatically from the platform, landing with theatrical precision. He and Mace approached each other from opposite sides of the warehouse, their gangs looking on with anticipation. Halfway to the center, both leaders simultaneously turned their backs to each other, continuing to walk backward until their shoulders made contact. The moment their shoulder blades touched, they spun to face each other with lightning speed. Without looking away, they each extended one arm outward to the sides in perfect synchronization. Mace his right, Palpatine his left. Masameda stepped forward, binding their wrists together with a length of cord, while they maintained their unblinking stare down. In one coordinated motion, they pulled away from each other. Then Mace ignited his lightsaber, his familiar purple blade, and to Anakin's shock, a crimson beam extended from Palpatine's hand. They attempted to strike each other as their respective gangs watched eagerly, forming a tight circle around the duel, their faces alive with excitement. Suddenly, Yoda burst through a side entrance, his small figure silhouetted dramatically against the doorway. He hobbled forward with unexpected speed, wearing what appeared to be a red leather jacket. "Stop it! Stop it!" Yoda shouted, his voice booming with unexpected volume. "Don't you make me repeat it." All eyes turned to the 2-foot-tall master. He positioned himself between the opponents, spinning his stick with surprising agility. Then Kit Fisto rushed in and dragged Yoda out of the warehouse as he protested, his shouts still clearly audible even though their source was no longer visible. The assembled crowd stared in confusion at the interruption. After a frozen moment, Ki-Adi-Mundi and Sly Moore stepped forward simultaneously, Moore moving to Mace's side, Mundi to Palpatine's. Each produced a small packet of premium blue spice. With theatrical flair, Sly Moore slammed a packet against Mace's chest, while Ki-Adi-Mundi did the same to Palpatine, the impact creating small clouds of blue powder that puffed through the air. The two leaders exchanged knowing glances, then simultaneously tossed their lightsabers aside. They each took their packet, broke the seal, and inhaled the contents deeply. A collective murmur of approval rippled through the gathered factions. The pulsing rhythm grew louder throughout the warehouse. Yoda's loud protests continued from somewhere outside, his repeated commands to "stop it" strangely merging with the beat. Rather than heeding his words, both gangs began moving in synchronized patterns to the rhythm of his shouts, transforming his protests into part of their musical backdrop. Their previous hostility dissolved into unified movement. Gang members from opposite sides paired off in dance, executing elaborate spins and coordinated footwork. Palpatine struggled visibly with the routine, repeatedly missing beats and bumping into others. His pristine white jacket flapped awkwardly as he attempted to mimic the fluid moves around him. Anakin jolted awake, disoriented. Half asleep, he rose and wandered through the darkened apartment, his mind still caught between dreaming and waking. He bumped an ornate stand, sending a delicate Nubian vase crashing to the floor. Two more met similar fates as he continued his sleepy path through the room. Remembering he wasn't at his temple quarters and had nothing to smoke, he moved toward the veranda. Padme emerged from the bedroom, alerted by the destruction, her eyes widening at the sight of him approaching the veranda's edge. "Anakin," she called out, rushing forward to intercept him before he could get too close to the precipitous drop. She guided him to the couch, sitting beside him. "You broke 3 of my crystal vases. Do you know how expensive they were?" Padme asked. "Yeah, well, bill it to the Republic," Anakin mumbled. Padme was struck by the line. I should use that in debates." Then, noticing his odd expression, her tone softened. "What's wrong?" she asked. Anakin described his bizarre vision. Padme stared at him for a long moment. "What in the galaxy did Yoda give you?" she asked finally. "I'll ask him tomorrow," Anakin promised. They looked at each other in the dim light of the Coruscant night. "I think I have lost my sleep," Anakin admitted. "Oh, have you now?" Padme replied, her voice low. "Then perhaps you should make use of this sleepless night to show me exactly how much you missed me, Jedi." Anakin smiled, reaching for her hands, his fingers intertwined with hers, feeling the familiar softness of her skin against his. The subtle floral scent of her perfume filled his senses as he leaned closer. In the gentle glow from Coruscant's cityscape, her eyes reflected the distant lights, pulling him deeper into their connection. His hand released hers to trace the delicate curve of her jawline, his touch feather-light as it moved to caress her neck. The moment felt perfect, intimate and secluded from the galaxy's troubles. His fingers continued their journey, moving to her shoulder, feeling the silken texture and warmth of her skin, warmth that seemed to intensify rapidly. His hand suddenly burned. He yanked it back with a yelp, blinking rapidly to clear his vision. What he had thought was Padme's shoulder revealed itself as one of the decorative thermal lamps. The actual Padme remained seated beside him, hands akimbo, having just witnessed him caress the inanimate object with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. "You should really find out what Yoda gave you," she said dryly. Anakin nodded, examining his reddened fingertips. "I really should." The next day, Anakin visited Yoda's quarters. The ancient Jedi Master was busy watching his favorite holonet show, Beyond Terrified Delinquents, Teacher Edition, a spin-off of the popular Beyond Terrified Delinquents. Yoda hunched forward, eyes glued to the screen. The camera showed a small, sterile room within what was likely a prison. In the center stood a rectangular metal table where a frail elderly librarian with iron gray hair pulled into a severe bun sat rigidly. Her thin fingers trembled as she clutched a thick book titled Proper Discipline, Maintaining Order in Educational Environments. 3 enormous inmates surrounded the table, each holding a metal chair. One was a Trandoshan with rippling muscles and prison tattoos covering his scales, another a human with a shaved head and cybernetic eye implants, and the third a bulky Zabrak with prominent facial horns filed to sharp points. "Start reading," yelled the Trandoshan, smashing his chair down onto the table directly in front of the librarian. The metal table rang with the impact, vibrating under her book. The librarian's voice quavered as she read, "One must maintain absolute silence in... We can't hear you." The human inmate brought his chair down hard on the table's edge, the metallic clang drowning out her words. All 3 inmates began slamming their chairs on the table simultaneously, creating a deafening cacophony. The librarian attempted to continue reading, her mouth moving but no sound audible over the crashing. "You can't read for shit," the Zabrak shouted, suddenly flipping the table. The book went flying across the room. "Now drop and give me 20 push-ups. Let's go." As the librarian lowered herself to the floor, the human doused her with a bucket of ice water. She collapsed, sputtering and gasping. The inmates had only begun teaching her why terrorizing younglings who whispered in the library was a crime against the galaxy. Her next task was teaching a Wookiee inmate how to read basic in 10 minutes. A commercial break interrupted the program, advertising the 46th season of Grace Bacta Tank. Anakin gestured toward the screen. "What exactly was that show, Master?" "Cultural education it is," Yoda responded sagely. "Humility. They learn." Anakin told Yoda about his altered perception from the previous night, how he'd mistaken a lamp for Padme and struggled to navigate his surroundings. Yoda merely shook his head, dismissing Anakin's concerns with a flick of his 3-fingered hand and a mutter about normal effects. Anakin then described the bizarre vision he'd experienced, the dream involving Mace, Palpatine, and the blue spice. This caught Yoda's attention. He turned away from the holoscreen, eyes narrowing with sudden intensity. "Not just some dream this is, a vision you have had." "I really don't think so, Master. It was just so messages from the deep. Dreams are," Yoda insisted, becoming increasingly agitated. "With your midichlorian count, significant this must be." He paced in tight circles, his claws clicking against the floor tiles. "Metaphorical, your vision is. Not literal events, but symbolic reflections of reality. The warehouse, the fighting, negotiations for territory these represent, and Palpatine with a red saber, symbolic this is. An adversary to Jedi interest he becomes." Yoda paused, his ears twitching as he processed the vision further. "And I, interrupting before getting dragged away, then they dance together and share my spice? This confirms my suspicions. The Council negotiates with Palpatine for distribution territories. Excluding me, they are. Behind my back, they plot." Anakin knew about the territory disputes between the Senate Cartel and Jedi Cartel. It was common knowledge among the higher ranks. Different sections of the galaxy's narcotics market had been controlled by separate factions for generations, with certain areas in the core worlds remaining contested for years. Yoda had always rejected negotiations, preferring direct competition to cooperation. "Planning something, the Council is," Yoda continued. "With Palpatine, a deal they broker. Control of distribution territories they seek. Yes, that is why the Force gave you your vision." "Master Yoda, I really think it was just the herb." Anakin tried to interject, but Yoda was already too fixated on this conspiracy theory to listen. "Confront them we must," Yoda declared, grabbing his Geimer stick and hobbling toward the door with surprising speed. "Come with me, you will, Skywalker. Your vision, your testimony, we need." Anakin followed reluctantly, watching his chances of learning about yesterday's mysterious herb vanish as Yoda spiraled into conspiracy theories. The situation had deteriorated before he could even broach the subject. In the council chamber, Yoda interrogated the other masters about their plans. After some reluctant admissions, Mace Windu confirmed they were indeed planning negotiations with Palpatine's cartel. "After the deal, we can just kill him," Mace explained pragmatically. "Or he's old and will die soon anyway. Then the whole territory will be ours." Why told me of this? You did not, Yoda demanded. Obi-Wan cleared his throat. Well, Master Yoda, as Satil Shan once wisely said, the unprepared mind cannot see the preparation of others without contaminating it with expectation. He stroked his beard thoughtfully. Furthermore, the ancient Jedi philosopher Kativak taught that knowledge given prematurely is like rain in a closed ecosystem. It nurtures nothing but doubt and drowns the tender roots of opportunity. We merely sought to present you with a fully formed plan rather than burden your contemplations with our inadequate machinations. Yoda inclined his head thoughtfully, not wanting to admit unfamiliarity with either quote Obi-Wan had just invented. It was a well-established tactic among the Jedi. When facing Yoda's scrutiny, one needed only to fabricate some ancient Jedi philosophy. The old master would never dispute it, fearing it might reveal gaps in his knowledge of Jedi history and make him appear less wise to his subordinates. Anakin, having no seat and relegated to standing near one of the large arched windows of the tower, merely confirmed what he'd seen in the vision when prompted. A mild surprise flickered across his features as the council confirmed Yoda's interpretations. The old master had been right after all. Still, Anakin dismissed it as mere coincidence, attributing the accuracy to Yoda's paranoia, eventually stumbling upon truth rather than genuine foresight. Attend this negotiation meeting with Palpatine, I will, Yoda announced firmly, pulling Anakin's attention back to the chamber. And young Skywalker I shall bring. Only he has the midichlorian count to match mine. The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Days later, the Jedi delegation met Palpatine's group at an abandoned warehouse in the Works District, a failed money laundering front. Mace and Palpatine discussed distribution territories for a while, their voices filling the cavernous space as the Jedi and Senate associates stood nearby in their respective groups. Anakin thought the scene looked vaguely familiar, but couldn't place why. He scrolled through his datapad instead, checking Podracer stats and zoning out as the negotiations continued. Yoda, who had been quietly fuming the entire time, finally broke his silence. What right have you to be here? He demanded, jabbing his Geimer stick directly at Palpatine while his free hand gesticulated wildly. He's here to settle this, Master Yoda, Mace said placatingly. Settle this I will, right now, okay? Yoda fumed. You have to cooperate, Master. It's what the council decided, Mace insisted. The council can suck me, Yoda spat. Several Jedi gasped at the outburst. We are not here to be insulted, Master Yoda, Palpatine cautioned, his voice low. Who you think you are? Yoda snapped at the supreme gangster of the Senate cartel. Kid, you should be. Me and my lineage built this whole operation. We did. We all did, together. The Jedi and the Senate, Palpatine offered diplomatically. No, Jedi did. Jedi credits. Jedi blood. Yoda's voice escalated to a shriek. That Senate building, I paid for it. And treat us like Wookiees, you do. This isn't personal, Master Yoda, Masameda insisted. It is personal, Yoda shouted, trembling with rage. In his agitation, Yoda's hands shook violently as he reached for his lightsaber, unscrewing a hidden compartment in the hilt. Anakin recognized the century-old modification. The saber had been hollowed out after the Starlight Beacon's destruction, specifically for storing Death Stick fluid. Yoda brought the hilt to his lips and took a desperate sip, seeking to calm his nerves. Almost immediately his eyes widened in distress. The lightsaber slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. He clutched at his chest, gasping for air as his body convulsed violently before collapsing in a heap on the warehouse floor. Obi-Wan and Anakin rushed to carry Yoda away as Mace and Palpatine continued their negotiations unperturbed. At the Temple Medical Facility, tests revealed Yoda had fallen into a deep coma from severe neural suppression caused by industrial-grade sedatives in his system. Outside the treatment room, Anakin confronted Obi-Wan. Master Fisto spiked his saber earlier, Obi-Wan admitted. Yoda would have ruined the negotiations with his paranoia. Anakin frowned. Calm down, Obi-Wan interrupted. With Yoda in a coma, a new position on the council is open. You can take it. As a master, we will wake Yoda up when Palpatine is taken care of. Anakin's frown transformed into a contemplative look. Well, I suppose that makes sense. The deal was finalized. The cartel territories were shared between the Jedi Order and the Senate, bringing numerous benefits. Increased credits flowing into both organizations, improved Jedi-Senate relations, and even a slowdown in the Clone Wars, as Count Dooku's competing cartel operations now faced a unified front. Everything was going well until about 7 weeks later, when Anakin's comlink buzzed at midnight. Padme's voice came through, barely audible over pounding bass. Anakin, I'm trapped in my own apartment, she shouted over the noise. What's wrong? Anakin set aside the tools he'd been using to fix Ahsoka's datapad. victim of his poor seating choice, and sat up, instantly alert. "It's our friend Mon," Padme began the story. "We were at a club tonight with some senators. She was possessed. 5 straight hours of drinking and dancing. You know Chandrilans can handle their alcohol, but Mon's got some genetic anomaly. She emptied half the bar herself." Anakin laughed. "Sounds like a good night." Until they tried closing. The bouncers wouldn't even touch her. They've seen her in committee meetings. But when this civilian tried to turn off the music, Padme's voice dropped. She kicked him down an elevator shaft. "She what?" Anakin's eyes widened. "We covered it up and bailed. Mon dragged me back here, drank everything in my cabinets, and passed out with her club playlist blaring. I can't turn it off. If I do, she'll wake up. If she wakes up, she'll want to hit another club." The thumping bass intensified, as if to emphasize her point. "Okay, I don't see what I can do here, Padme," Anakin said. "Just get me out of here, Anakin. Let's go to 500. You got any of that stuff that Yoda gave you?" "No, unfortunately," Anakin replied. Well, in that case, Palpatine left for Naboo this morning," Padme said. "Supposedly visiting a children's hospital. Money laundering front, I don't know. He is not here." "Okay," Anakin prompted, sensing she was leading up to something. "After your cartel deal, his office must be stocked. I have all the Senate passcodes." A smile spread across Anakin's face. "You want to raid his office for spice?" "I prefer to call it an unscheduled redistribution of diplomatic assets for maintaining galactic balance and equity," Padme responded. "Bring R2. We'll need him for the surveillance systems." "Sure, let's go commit some treason," Anakin said. "See you soon." Anakin quickly left the temple and picked up Padme, who was waiting by the veranda steps, Mon having woken up and dancing inside. Arriving at the executive building under the cover of night, Anakin, Padme, and R2 set to work. Using the passcodes Padme provided, the astromech accessed the Senate surveillance network. R2 promptly manipulated the system, disabling its recording functions. The droid then looped a recording of climate protesters on every screen in the building, activists ranting about trees having feelings and demanding Coruscant's destruction. Thanks to what could only be Senate budget cuts hitting security staffing, the hallway to Palpatine's office was completely unguarded. While the building's monitors ironically broadcast the Coruscant-based protesters' anti-Coruscant message, Anakin and Padme slipped easily into the Chancellor's private office. As they searched the office, Padme discovered an ornate bottle in one of the shelves. She examined the label, a rare Nubian vintage, and uncorked it. "Might as well enjoy ourselves while we're committing treason," she said, taking a sip directly from the bottle. Anakin settled into Palpatine's high-backed chair, leaning back with his boots propped on the polished desk surface. "How do I look?" he asked, mimicking the Chancellor's dignified posture. "Very official," Padme grinned, raising her datapad. "Stay just like that." The device emitted a soft chime as she captured the image. Anakin swiveled in the chair, idly inspecting the drawers. His fingers found a hidden latch beneath the center drawer. With a gentle click, a compartment slid open, revealing a leather-bound volume. "What's this?" he muttered, lifting the book. The cover read, "Dark Tears of the Eternal Shadow, a Sith's Pain Journey Through Infinite Vengeance," in elaborate, blood-red calligraphy. Padme moved beside him, leaning over his shoulder as he opened it. The first pages contained meticulous descriptions of Sith philosophy, intermingled with bitter manifestos about power and vengeance. "Look at this," Anakin said, turning to a page filled with "I hate Jedi," repeated in increasingly bad handwriting. "Palpatine is a Sith," Anakin realized, his voice low with disbelief. "What's that exactly?" Padme asked, squinting at a particularly concerning diagram of ritual sacrifices. "Like an extremely edgy Jedi, I suppose. At least that's what Master Yoda calls them." Anakin flipped through more pages, finding detailed plans for galactic domination alongside disturbing promises of retribution. "We need to show this to the Council," Anakin said, his expression grave. "We should record it," Padme suggested. "That way Palpatine won't know we found it." She set down the bottle and glanced at the high-backed chair. Padme couldn't reach over it to record properly, so Anakin dragged over a crate labeled "Pending Executive Orders, Do Not Lose," and began stacking thick folders of unsent legislation beside the desk. Once the tower was tall enough, he sat on top of it, perched awkwardly just high enough to lean over Palpatine's polished writing surface. The leather-bound book rested on the desk before him. Padme stepped behind him. She reached around from either side of his head, holding the datapad above the book for a clear, top-down view. Both her hands came to rest on his shoulders as she adjusted the angle, her body forming a frame around him as she peered at the screen. "Turn the pages slowly," she instructed as she began recording. As Anakin turned the pages, they discovered increasingly disturbing content. One page featured a collection of withered flowers, labeled "Tears of My Enemies." They found a page filled with ominous poetry about the crushing void of existence and how no one understands the true power of darkness. Another contained a handwritten list titled Reasons to Despise the Jedi. A particularly disturbing section detailed something called Order 666, with diagrams of clone troopers with modified brain chips. The notes explained how activation would compel the clones to hunt down their Jedi generals and consume their flesh while they still live. Anakin grimaced at the crude illustrations accompanying the text. "He's planning to have the clones eat the Jedi alive," he whispered in horror. They discovered several surveillance photographs hidden between pages, images of themselves. In each one, Padme's face had been scratched out with something. Beneath each image, the phrase, "She does not deserve him," was scrawled in frantic handwriting, the letters growing more jagged and pressed deeper into the page with each repetition. Padme tried to say something but burst into laughter before the words could come out, her arms trembling as she struggled to keep the datapad steady over the book. Anakin turned to a page with a collection of what appeared to be rejected Sith names: Darth Morbidus, Darth Painbringer, Darth Shadowfear, Darth Agonus. The name Darth Darthius was also listed, but had been crossed out with the note, "Already taken," scribbled beside it. "This is the weirdest thing I have ever seen," Anakin muttered, shaking his head. Padme's comlink chimed. She answered without stopping the recording. "Padme," Dorme's voice came through, sounding harried. "Your friend has gone crazy. She's ordered more drinks and started a dance circle in the main hall. I'm not sure how to handle this." "It's fine," Padme replied dismissively. "She's rich. She'll pay if she breaks anything." "The other handmaidens have joined her," Dorme added. "Go join them," Padme said. Her voice edged with amusement. "She may burn the place down," Dorme replied. "Then we'll bill it to the Republic," Padme said. "Sure," Dorme chuckled, and the call ended. Padme allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She'd been waiting to use that line. However, Anakin not taking note of it annoyed her somewhat. "Anakin," she said. "Hmm?" he replied, eyes still on the page. She exhaled through her nose. "Nothing. What were you saying?" Anakin pointed to the page they had left off on. "I've never read anything this bizarre." "Oh? Well, at least he didn't write, 'I'm haunted by the kiss you should never have given me,' or 'I wish I could just wish away my feelings, but I can't.' Oh, and my personal favorite, 'You've grown more beautiful, Padme.' For a senator, I mean." All right. Those lines worked, though, didn't they? "What does that say about you?" he asked, turning pages as she recorded. "That I'm an incredibly kind-hearted person who doesn't judge people based on their social skills," she replied, leaning forward slightly and pressing her elbows into his shoulders. "You should appreciate me more." "Didn't you throw someone into a wood chipper when you were 16? Anakin asked. "They deserved it," Padme replied without hesitation. They reached the final page, finding a crude drawing of Master Yoda impaled on a stick being roasted over an open flame. They both stifled laughter, with Anakin saying, "We should be taking this a lot more seriously." When they finished recording, Padme grabbed the bottle, and they slipped out of the office, evidence secured. They almost forgot R2, who they had left at a terminal to warn them in case someone tried to enter the office. The next day, Anakin presented his findings to the Jedi Council. "We were wrong," Mace admitted. "Yoda wasn't being paranoid. Palpatine might very well be an ancient spice lord who wants to bring back the Sith spice empire." "The Sith have been extinct for a millennium," Ki-Adi-Mundi declared. The council continued their discussion on how to confront Palpatine. Throughout their deliberations, Ki-Adi-Mundi kept repeating his statement like a broken holodisc. Each iteration met with complete indifference from his colleagues, who had long since learned to filter out his predictable contributions. "First, we must wake up Yoda," Obi-Wan suggested. The council members nodded in agreement. They adjourned their meeting and proceeded to the healing ward, where Yoda remained in his coma-like state. The healers injected pure spice directly into Yoda's system, and he awoke almost immediately. They explained the situation, carefully omitting their role in his coma. Yoda, believing he had been right all along, proposed a plan. They arranged another meeting with Palpatine in the works, their usual spot. Upon arrival, the Chancellor eagerly sampled a new product offered by the Jedi. Once he did, they put Yoda's plan into motion. "We know you're a Sith," Mace announced abruptly, adding that they were going to legally take over his narcotics trade and how the Council would decide his fate. Palpatine's face contorted with rage. "I am the Council," he hissed, even though that didn't make much logical sense. But they weren't there for an IQ test. They were there for a drug sampling, which had now turned into a fight. Drawing a red lightsaber from his robes, he attacked with surprising speed, cutting down 4 Jedi Masters. He then spun toward the 5th Jedi that would fall to his blade. With a primal scream, he lunged forward, plunging his lightsaber into a massive electrical transformer. A blinding flash erupted, followed by an acrid cloud of smoke as the Chancellor's body convulsed and exploded. The battle for the galactic drug trade concluded in mere seconds, ending with Supreme Gangster Palpatine's smoldering remains scattered across the warehouse floor. Behind a rusted door, Yoda remained frozen in place, poised for his grand entrance. The ancient master had choreographed this moment meticulously, planning to emerge dramatically and explain his ingenious deception. He'd been eager to reveal how the Kashyyyk herb he'd cultivated with Chewbacca had manipulated Palpatine's perception, causing the Chancellor to mistake his own bodyguards and lieutenants for Jedi, the same compound that had once led Anakin to engage romantically with a decorative lamp. But fate had robbed Yoda of his moment of triumph. The Supreme Chancellor had slaughtered his most loyal enforcers in a drug-induced frenzy before electrocuting himself. With his prepared monologue rendered pointless, he shuffled into the open space, his Geimer stick scraping dejectedly against the floor as he surveyed the anticlimactic scene before him. Anakin stood at the edge of a broken viewpane, largely oblivious to the confrontation. His attention had drifted to the Coruscant sunset painting the polluted sky in bands of crimson and amber. A new dawn for the cartel, but it was dusk, but point remains. With Palpatine eliminated, the Jedi took complete control of the galactic cartel. Count Dooku attempted retaliation but died when he threw a grenade pin instead of the armed grenade at a group of math tutors for no reason. The Clone Turf Wars ended, the Jedi maintained their power, and peace, of a sort, returned to the galaxy. Mon Mothma got everyone drunk and became Chancellor, then turned the Senate Rotunda into a dance club. Yoda credited Anakin's high midichlorian count for saving them and made him Grand Master. The ancient Jedi spent the rest of his days watching Gray's Bacta tank,